Hello and welcome to another live stream. We've got this very challenging scene here that would probably scared me quite a few years ago, and it still scares me a bit today, really, that I'm not totally sure whether this is going to be a success or not, but I shall talk you through what I will do to try and make it a success. So sorry, Conrad, it's a bit early in the morning for you. Obviously, in America, it's probably okay time-wise, and France and the UK. But obviously the replay will be available. And Pamela, you're more than welcome to watch. It's always good to have you here. So if you are watching this live, give me a comment. It's much appreciated. It helps the algorithm as well, that it will show it to more people as well. That if I get comments, it shows people are engaging with the live stream. So it's going to take a little while, this one, so better get cracking. So slightly bigger, this panel. This is just a wood panel that's been primed with some burnt umber and acrylic gesso. This is 45 centimeters by 35 centimeters. So I'll talk you through the drawing a bit later on, but we'll get started. But I think on this scene I shall get some darks in. That it's just so much detail on here. We've got, a million rocks underwater there. It's going to be a nightmare. So what I think will be the best way is to just establish a few areas where my eye kind of gets drawn to like this rock, for instance, which is this one here, that we've got, the darkest dark against the lightest light pretty much here. So that strong contrast draws your eye. So I think it'd be a good idea to get some of those areas in, because a lot of the other detail can be lost. But as long as I get some rocks in there that have got some detail, we should be fine. But I think that's the key, that this could quite easily fail as a painting if I tried to paint everything in the sort of the time that I'm trying to paint it. That there are artists who will paint everything on this scene, but they wouldn't do it in an hour or so. That but they have a very different painting and a different sort of finish to it. That I will be looking for a loose impressionistic painting. So I shall keep the paint fairly thin to start with, and normal sort of method I shall go for trying to cover the canvas as quickly and as confidently as possible, and then come back and refine and put any detail in. So bit of yellow in there. So same method. I've got a laminated photo here that I'm just not going to worry about the colors. That if I get the exact color correct, it's not going to be a problem, but the tone of value needs to be right. So when you put a light value next to a dark value, just lay it on. Don't mess about with it too much, because you will milk up your darks and you'll lose your lights. So just put it on and don't mess about with it too much. So hello David, Mike and Don and Hilary. Good to have you all here watching live. But I won't get too involved with these rocks detail wise, just get the overall shape in. So that's a rock and it's kind of the right tonal value. Well, it should be the right tonal value, but it will need more detail. So I can see there's a dark here in the photo. A lot of the darks just look black, but if we were here in real life looking at this scene, there would be greens and all sorts in here. So I shall just have to do the best I can. So edges as well, take care of your edges. We've got a sharp edge here. That will again draw the eye to this rock. This isn't necessarily going to be where the center of focus is. Concentrate what you're doing. I've just painted over a rock there, but luckily rocks can be all sorts of shapes and sizes and so on. So if I do get one in the wrong place, it's not the end of the world. That I've started off with a kind of a bit of a jumble of shapes here, that I used a projector to put the image on here, but purely to speed things up. but also to get, you know, fairly accurate drawing. That I got away with that rock there. So what I'll probably need to do is jump about a little bit, because I will get sort of bogged down with all this detail, because, you know, I'm not going to paint all these shapes I put in here. That I will just try and get away with painting as minimal as possible. So some rocks off in the distance, but this is where you really do need to check your tonal values. That if you get your tonal values wrong, you're going to be up against it, because you're going to be constantly fixing. And on a scene like this, you don't want to be doing that, because you just get lost. That I'll just lay that into there, and maybe, you know, a soft edge will be good in there. So always be thinking about your edges, whether it's you know, a hard edge or a soft edge. We've got another dark in there, which just separates those rocks. But your edges will make your painting look professional. You know, if you've got hard edges everywhere, you know, it just kind of doesn't look realistic. That off in the distance here, we probably will want soft edges, because things with hard edges tend to come forward. And I've kind of got two brushes on the go at the moment. One I'm using for my lighter colours, and one I'm using for the darker colours, because otherwise you just end up with everything kind of milky. So it's more towards brown in there. So have a break from there for the moment. Hello, Bonnie and Diane. So we've got a large dark over here. Let's do that, and that will make me feel better that the large part of the canvas is covered or bored. So this can be fairly flat over here. And just take care again where these rocks are going to be, but definitely we'll want soft edges off in the distance there. And interesting brushwork, you know, so I'll be rolling that brush around and trying to create all sorts of interesting stuff. And let's just break that up a little bit. Let's put a bit of something in there I can see. And I've just really got to get my mind into the mindset of just looking at shapes, because, you know, if I start trying to paint, you know, rocks detailed and the water and so on, it'll just become overwhelming, and, you know, you just, like I say, you'll get lost, guaranteed. I've tried painting stuff like this before when I was a beginner, and it just ended up a mess. And, you know, I don't generally go for subjects like this, but got to keep it interesting. That you know, I paint all sorts of things. That you know, so I know some people kind of paint, you know, horses, or they'll stick to seascapes, landscapes, or whatever. But, you know, I kind of just paint all sorts of things, really. And I suppose now kind of making YouTube videos, that determines kind of, you know, as well what I'm doing. That, you know, I know there's a wider range of people, you know, with different interests watching this, so, you know, probably influences what I paint as well. But to be fair, I really don't mind. I just like painting. That I'm quite interested in painting portraits, and a few years ago I kind of did quite a bit of study. So I'm self-taught. I did a bit of study trying to paint portraits. Incredibly difficult. You really do need an accurate drawing. But I've only just started using a projector probably in the last 12 months. But I sort of obviously have noticed now that a lot of the channels and artists I followed who do portraits use a projector. It does leave a different kind of drawing, but I can understand why, because on a portrait everything has to be perfect. And if I got that rock slightly wrong, you're not going to notice, but, you know, if it's your ear or your nose, you're in trouble. So yeah, I'm self-taught. I've been painting since my early 20s. I kind of had it as a hobby for the first 10 years. I worked in sales, working for a BMW garage selling BMW motorcycles. But probably one of the drives to become an artist was to become my own boss. So probably by the time I was about 30, I was painting part-time. I had a picture framing business, which I did alongside my painting, which I thought was quite, in keeping with the art. And then probably for the last sort of 10 years, I suppose, that I've been just painting now, really. But again, it's always changing. But for the last sort of 10 years, I was making a living selling artwork. But now I'm doing YouTube videos, teaching. But I think moving to France, it's slightly different. I used to sell a lot on Etsy and eBay and so on. But putting my location to France, that kind of changed a few things, I think. So it kind of pushed me into doing something different, which actually worked really well, because I much prefer to be doing this than trying to sell artwork. I do sell some paintings. I sold one today, which was good. But it's not my main focus now. So I'm just painting these shapes. We've got an orange shape, but there's lots of different shapes within this shape, but may not need to paint it. So I shall just concentrate on painting what I see, but without getting into fiddly detail. And it's kind of a bit of a patchwork of shapes. And as and when I think, oh, I'm getting a bit, lost it, I'll move away from there and go somewhere else. So let's go over here. So this is where, having a good drawing, or, an accurate drawing does help. That's one thing I suppose I have learned over the years, that, I've spent a lot of time learning to draw, that I suppose I've become a little bit lazy, and so I'll use a projector occasionally, but quite often I'll go back and I'll use a proportional divider or something, or freehand it. Obviously, when I'm outdoors painting, I'm freehanding, but I probably wouldn't advise you just to go straight to using a projector. You need to learn to draw, but I suppose everyone's got different reasons for doing this. You may just want to paint. So at the end of the day, you can do whatever you like. But I know it upsets a lot of people, and I'll probably get a few comments, but I just block those from my channel. Anyone who's not being nice. So basically, keep going, but stay focused, and it's good to take regular breaks when you are painting. That I tend to find about an hour, I'm ready for a rest, but I do try to get the painting done in one hit. I'm not very good at coming back and working on them again. Get a bit fiddly in detail with that rock. Keep going. So need another brush on the go. So I always have plenty of brushes, and I'll keep one from one for my dark, one for my kind of light greys, but maybe this, we've got some warmth over here. And that's what kind of appealed to me with this scene, is the warmth in it. That where's that rock? So that one is kind of there. So I've got that one slightly wrong place, but like I say, it won't matter. As long as we get the tonal values in the right place, it should be good. Let's have a break from that. Let's work on some of these trees. Get those brushes for that. So greens, they're a bit of a nightmare. That can make your painting look very amateur if you get the wrong shade of green, or it's just too bright green. That's why I don't tend to use colours straight from the tube, greens, because they never look realistic. But I'm using red there to desaturate the green. And just do a little test, that's about right. So we've got some green there, and I'll just paint into that shape there. So it's a lot darker than it looks. Hello Paula from Texas, and Roy has been watching the plein air video, hay bales. Yeah, quite enjoyed that. But there's not a lot else to paint around here where I live. It's all fields and hay bales at the moment. So it'd be quite good just to put that rock in there in the distance. That will help to lead the eye through the painting. But again, it's only a tiny little rock, but it's worth spending the time to get the tonal value right. Now back to the green, over here. So yeah, it's probably never been a better time to be a professional artist. It's always going to be tricky to sell your artwork, but if you get yourself to a standard that is, very good, you will sell artwork, definitely. If you get yourself probably 20 pieces, to a high standard, you could probably approach a gallery. Depends where you are. But actually came across quite a good gallery while we was away in the camper van last week, which actually had a lot of traditional artwork in it. That I do find a lot of galleries tend to have a lot of sort of modern art in France, which is not my thing. But yeah, never been a better time to be an artist, and I think they do say a great way to learn is to teach, and I say I am self-taught, but I think lots of experience. That kind of I probably learned the hard way. I was learning before YouTube, so a lot of library books and just fudging my way through. But it's actually quite a good way to learn to make mistakes, because all the time you are learning what's happening with the paint and handling brushes and so on. I studied the old masters a lot to kind of find a style that I like. That I've tried. I was quite interested in doing sort of photorealistic stuff for a while, but that kind of didn't necessarily appeal to me in the end. So I went back to the brushworky stuff that likes of John Singer Sargent and Ted Seago, and I think it's quite popular today. Certainly the artwork that sells tends to be the more loose kind of stuff. But I tend not to worry too much about trying to sell artwork. It's can be quite stressful at times, particularly if you're relying on it for an income. It's not an easy life as an artist. So I'm sure some of you who are doing it that way know. So there's kind of the background. It's looking okay. So let's have a go with some of this water, have a break from all that. So I've got lots of brushes here to pick here. So let's go for a bigger brush here. So we've got a bluey green. I'll start with, not that much white. Start with the blue. Yeah, it's the right sort of tonal value, but it needs to go towards green. So a bit of yellow. And the colours I've got here are titanium white, cadmium yellow pale, cyan crimson, ultramarine blue, and burnt umber. So not bad. Still needs to go more green. But too green, so a bit of burnt umber just to desaturate that a little bit. And certainly on this photo, I don't think there's any colour we couldn't match with just these colours. And I've said it before, if you are a beginner, I would strongly advise you just to paint with just a limited palette. You'll progress a lot quicker because you'll learn these colours inside and out, and then you can just add colours as and when you want to. That's kind of coming around there. So keep checking, it's lighter off there. And if you study, say, John Singer Sargent painting, which he's done a few like this, one of my patrons on my oil painting patron page has done a few studies of Sargent. They were really good, but it's a great way to learn, that kind of brushwork if that's what interests you. Again, same here, that it plays tricks on your mind, all this stuff here, and we know it's sort of water foaming up and so on, that all it is just a colour, a tonal value, and you just got to try and put them in the right place. And this is why, this would seem a really difficult subject. It's just because it's just so much going on here. And so, pick the right subject for yourself. If you are a beginner, I wouldn't necessarily tackle this. Take inspiration from it, and but pick stuff that's kind of realistic for a beginner. But you need to paint something that inspires you, that's for sure. But even though I knew this was going to be really difficult, but it may not be difficult if I stick to what I'm doing here and don't sort of come away from this method, it will work. It's quite reassuring, painting like this, that it will end up okay. But some people say, well, this is a bit boring doing it this way. It's a bit not arty, is it? But it's whatever sort of suits you, really. That I wouldn't say I'm necessarily an arty painter. That I do quite like the technical way, or to approach it, knowing that I need to put how to mix this color and tone and put it in the right place. But with some paintings, which if I'm quite confident with that, I'll go at it more in an arty way, shall we say? And but I suppose that's where my watercolors come in. That gives me a chance to be, more, I suppose, paint with a bit of bravado, or whatever sometimes. But the brushwork will make this painting. That we can all mix this color, we can all get the right tone, we can put it in the right place. But it's how we lay that paint on is what's going to differentiate between our paintings. Right. Still quite thin here, the paint, because if I get too much white everywhere, you've got to be careful with white, that it just milks everything up and just becomes a mess. So keep going. Go back to, let's put some of that up there, the foam from the distance there. Where is that? So if you draw stuff with freehand, you do have a much better idea where things are. It's there. But when you trace or whatever, you kind of don't get any kind of relationship with the drawing, so bear that in mind. Keep that brush for the white. So we've got this green here, which is quite nice. So it's back to the yellow, bit of blue. And sometimes it's quite difficult to see these colours. But what you've got to do is just hold your brush up. It's darker than that and slightly more towards blue. And I really admire the painters like John Singer Sargent, who actually painted things like this on location. Obviously I've got a still image here, nothing's moving, but if this was all moving, it's quite a feat. So all I got to do is put that shape with that color and tone there in the right place. And what could go wrong? So do a check, go slightly darker over here. We've got that rock there, dark, and it really plays tricks on your mind. These rocks under the water, I'm not sure whether I'll get that effect really, but some artists do. It's quite incredible. Attention to detail. Let's get that rock in there before I lose where it is. Really got to check, that that was too light, my first guess. That's too red. And just a little thing like that can just throw your painting out if you get it wrong. And what happens is, if you make a mistake somewhere, just this little rock here, if I got the tonal value wrong for that, and then it will just throw other things out, and you're constantly trying to figure out what went wrong. Thank you, Hilary. And Jab99, love your artwork, and can you tell me what you're using to draw the white lines and marks? Yeah, lots of people ask that question. I did answer it on another video, which I don't think that's on YouTube at the moment. That's on Patreon. But anything that leaves a mark, basically. You know, I've got a Derwent white pastel. I've got some Conti white crayons. Anything that leaves a mark is all you need. No, don't worry about it. There's no special magic tool or anything. Hello, Tom, who's thrown a lot of I've thrown a lot of paintings out. Yes, good for you. That don't hang on to them if you don't you know, want them. They're not good for your confidence to have paintings around that you're not happy with. I tend to paint over them. But I had a good chuck out the other day. It's quite therapeutic, really. But that's it. You know, you progress as an artist. That stuff you did years ago, you know, isn't what you're doing now. But at the time, you were quite proud of it. That problem is when you give paintings to your mum, like I used to, you won't let go of them. So every time you go and visit her, you see all your old work, and it can make you cringe. But it's a good reminder, and it sort of lets you know, I suppose, where you've progressed. But it's perhaps a good idea maybe to keep a few of them. You know, don't throw them all out. But right, we've got a bit of blue off in the distance here, which all you got to do, just check we got that right tonal value, because it's quite important, that bit there, that you could easily get that wrong. So I always have a bit of tissue in my hand, so I'm sort of constantly wiping the brush off when I mix another colour. But I do try to keep brushes for, like I say, darks and lights, but inevitably they all end up, I forget, and I pick up another one. So I can see some red in there. So, but it's, you know, very dark. It's almost like black. And a little bit there, and then there's a bit of orange. And probably what happens, I kind of start off with good intentions of, you know, really matching the colours and so on. But as the painting progresses, you get a little bit tired, and you kind of think, oh, that will do. So I shall try not to do that. But if you get the painting covered, you know, all the canvas first, you know, with the correct tones and values, it's much easier. Then you can kind of use those marks you've put down as a guide to then put in the you know, the other marks. I'm using, you know, brush marks horizontal here to sort of help just show that the water, and then I use brush marks going up here for the trees. So a bit more work on these rocks. But so this is a bit of a trick on the eye here, because, you know, they're black dark rocks under there, but, you know, if we do put black paint next to that, it's much darker. So we've almost got black here, but it's much lighter in tone there, which gives the illusion of it being underwater. So let's try that. Bit of brown. And that's why I find moving about on the canvas is quite good, or panel, whatever you're using, because, and if I tried to paint all of this first, I just wouldn't have the patience, and I would get lost. Getting a few darks in there. Darks there. So this is the rock underwater, the sort of shadow. So back to another brush which has got the lighter tone. So, you know, this is quite a tricky colour to match. If you was in life, I would, only because it's kind of playing tricks on your mind. But if you've got a printed photo, quite easy, because all you got to do is just put a bit of paint on your brush and just offer it up. So too blue, needs a bit of red in there. And it can be quite fiddly, and you think, there's a lot of effort to try and match that colour, but it's worth it in the end. So we've got hard edges here, and none of this probably will make sense until the canvas is covered. I keep calling it canvas, but you know what I mean. It's Tom says, I was sort of joking, Robert, because when you were doing the rocks under the water, you said if you get this wrong, it could throw your painting out. So oh right, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I know what you mean. Sometimes you get to a point you think, is it time to just abandon? But to be fair, since I've been painting this method with oils, where I'm sort of really checking my colours and so on, I can't remember the last time I had to abandon a painting. They don't always turn out to be masterpieces. Probably none of them have, but I'll have a lot more success rate than when I was just kind of, I suppose, just going for it and hoping for the best. I certainly have a lot more success with my oils and with my watercolors. Some of my watercolors work, but a good proportion of them don't, because if you make a mistake or something doesn't go quite right, there's just no way to fix it. So oil painting is a lot more forgiving than watercolor, but I do like the challenge of watercolor. And really, the tonal value is so much more important than the color that I don't need to really match the colors here. As long as I get the tonal value right, that's going to be absolutely fine. It's only if you compared it to the photo you would notice that the color's different, but take this away from the reference picture, which is obviously what I'll do when it's finished, to see it in its own right. Have I watched Mark Carter? Yeah, I've seen some of his videos. That I came across him that I was doing a workshop, a physical workshop, and I used to laminate the photos so I could reuse them on different workshops. And I kind of came across the method of putting the paint on there by accident, really. I was sort of showing some demonstrating and trying to get the color, and I sort of put it on there. And I said, well, you could actually do that. And I kind of thought I'd invented something, but obviously there's lots of artists who are using this method. But going back to artists hundreds and hundreds of years ago, they were doing the same. They were checking their colors. They might not have had a laminated photo, but they would have held their brush or a palette knife up to the reference picture or whatever they were painting. A lot of them painted from life. Close one eye, squint, and is it the right tonal value? So it's nothing new. Just as with technology, things move on, that we can print out a photo and paint from a photo. And I've lost my rock there. Never mind. But I need a hard edge there, I think. But same with using a projector to put your image on there. That's not new. The artists used to use convex mirrors or concave, I can never remember which one, where they would use the sun and use the light and project the portrait or the person they were painting onto a canvas, and then they would get a very good drawing. Obviously quite often they were reversed because of the convex mirror, which is why in history there's a lot of left-handed portraits, supposedly. I suppose they probably had ways to turn that around, I don't know, but it's nothing new. Artists who, I think, if Da Vinci had access to a projector, I think he would have used it, and so on. That artists have always been very inventive with coming up with ideas to improve the artwork and make the best artwork they can. The grid method is widely used, but I just find that very laborious, and I prefer the proportional divider. And I say now, if I'm in a hurry, I say this week I've had watercolor live stream, a watercolor workshop, I had galleries to pick up paintings, and this live stream and making videos. So for me, it's just a really good tool to speed the process up. Let's not get lost. And Hillary's bought the Geneva paint. Yeah, that I think it's he mixes linseed oil in it. That's all as well. I think that don't overcomplicate it. That I know. I don't think he's necessarily liked by a lot of the academic artists, because he just makes it very simple for everyone. And that's kind of the same with what I'm trying to do. That it isn't as difficult as everyone perhaps would like you to think. That it is as simple as putting the right colour and the right tone in the right place. Obviously, it's not as easy as that, I know, but you don't have to have all these different mediums and whatever else. That keeping it simple always works best. So let's go for a bit more of this. I'm leaving this to keep putting this bit off because I'm not necessarily, I just don't like all this kind of detailed stuff. It doesn't appeal to me, which is why I probably would normally shade away from scenes like this. But more orange. And I think also have, the right expectations to what you're going to achieve in your painting. That I'm not expecting to achieve a photo realistic painting here. Maybe, from a distance it's going to look good, but I'm certainly not going to have people up close to the canvas looking at, that looks like a real rock or whatever. I know that's not going to happen, but it's not what I'm going for. And a lot of people, it all depends. A lot of people just love all this loose brushwork, which I do. It's how I want the painting to look. But some people, like the photorealistic stuff, and judge a painting whether it's good. Does it look like a photo? Which, some would argue, why not just have a photo? But I do obviously think the artists who do create that photorealistic stuff is very impressive. It's quite a skill. Right, back to my green brush. So I didn't paint many of these rocks, did I, before I moved away? So where are we over here? We've got much lighter. So how are we doing for time? 37 minutes in, not bad. Let's try and get it covered in this sitting. So we've got some lighter values there. And I can use these brush marks to describe movement on the water, maybe. And that's much lighter and steers slightly towards red. Or blue. So that kind of comes across here. It gets lighter over here. And if you get your tonal values right, you really don't need to paint all of this. You can get away with so much that I think it's kind of how we see is that the tonal values that I painted a swan for my Patreon page the other day, which will be on YouTube eventually. But from a distance it looks quite photorealistic, but up close it's just a massive brushwork. So more green. Got a lot of white on here at the moment, so I've got to be careful. We've got a rock, something here, just orange, just a shape. So that's kind of there. So back to these rocks down here. We've got a lot of orange over here, so I think we have to simplify this over here. let's just get these. So basically the rocks under the water, they've got a shadow at the base. So they're all going to be slightly different colours and tones. They've got a lighter part on the top. And I suppose if you painted this subject regularly, you would, probably be quite comfortable painting these rocks, and you could probably do, just make them up. I could certainly paint a seascape from my imagination because I've painted so many. So it's the same colour there. So let's just go for it. More red. And I think this is why subjects like this are so challenging, because so I'm getting lost. Even though I've got a fairly accurate drawing here, even with the drawing, it's not helping me. But that's only because I'm trying to make it like the scene. I've got to get that out of my head. All I've got to do is just put these tonal values in the right place. Just paint shapes. It will all just come good in the end. Just need a few darks in here. And we've got some water there. Let's get that in. Another brush. It's quite hot today here in France. Finally, we've had a real wet year. But suddenly we've got a bit of a heat wave again now, which is good because the paintings dry quite quickly. But all these obviously don't dry the same as like acrylics or watercolour, but they do dry a bit quicker with the heat. Right. Orange in there, a bit of dark there. So let's go for mixing this colour here, which nice big blob of white. It looks kind of a light green, darker than that. So blue, touch of brown, and you just got to paint loads, to be able to mix colours confidently. That it obviously will help you if you've got a laminated photo to check it. Does make it easier to see these tones. But, obviously, when you go outdoors and paint, you don't have that luxury, so it's good to be able to do it. Let's just get that. Just look at that as one big shape, I think, and then we'll come back and put in the variations. There goes more yellow down here. And I say this is where the brushwork will carry the painting. If I get some interesting brushwork here, that if I haven't painted all the rocks, will be fine. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. Try to be. So keep going. Have a break from these rocks in a minute. Come overwhelmed with all this. Go back to the orange. And going back to sort of simple palette, I've got loads of tubes of paint. I've quite often I'll use when I go outdoors and paint, I'll take some yellow ochre and burnt sienna and so on with me and use those. But I try to use a simple palette for these demos because everyone can probably get hold of these colours. They don't have to be the same brands, but and no, I do find I go back to if I do a painting, I've got a little bit lost on that, or I've perhaps used a bit of phthalo blue, which was a bit overpowering and so on. I go back to just using these colours. It's just so much easier to paint with just a limited palette. But I suppose you kind of feel you should use more colours, maybe, but it just makes it more complicated. And it depends on the scene. A subject like this, which is obviously a very natural looking subject, You know, you only need these primary colours. I suppose if you think about your printer, you only put in the primary colours in your printer. So, right, so I'll go with these rocks over here. Okay, so what we got here? Slightly more yellowy orange. And the colours not that important, it's the tonal value. So we've got the front of the rock is receiving the light, so it's lighter there, and then there's a dark on that side, and that kind of much the same along this. That's that rock. There's a bit of warmth on some of these rocks. Down to the water's edge. Get some darks in here. So this is kind of where you can not really worry about the detail off here so much, because you know it's going to be around here where people are concentrating their eyes, hopefully. So I think I'll probably get the canvas or the panel covered in one hit, but certainly I'll probably need 2 sittings on a larger painting like this. So I can finish it on another live stream, that's for sure, or on a YouTube video. Rocks in there, and then go darks. So let's get the water's edge here. So obviously we've got the green, which is reflecting the trees above on the water, and then here is the reflecting the rocks, which the reflections tend to be a little bit darker than what's there, but lighter than that. Darker than that. Still darker than that. So it gets about there. It's just darker than the rocks, and you tend to find that shapes that are lighter tend to reflect a little bit darker, and the darker shapes will be a bit lighter. And there's going to be some shadows which will be darker in there, the rocks. So I've kind of just painted the shapes, and it's probably looking okay, the scene. It will just obviously need some detail on here eventually, but I tend to go for painting the big shapes first and then the details, you know, put the details in after. So I suppose the details are the smaller shapes, so paint the big shapes first. So a nice crisp edge there, and it's a bit lighter, more towards green. So big welcome to new Patreon members. A few people have joined this week. But always appreciated your support. Just subtle changes. It was just a little bit darker there. And again, using the brush marks to describe the waterfall there. Warmth there with some rocks. And like I say, you kind of just got to accept you're never going to paint it all. Well, obviously that's, you may want to, but I have to accept that I'm not going to paint all this detail. And I've got to then just look at the scene and think, well, what do I actually need to paint for it to work? You know, this needs to be quite detailed where the waterfall is here. That and all it is just a few darks in the right place, hard edges, and all of a sudden it will become the waterfall. I shall concentrate on this for a little bit, try and get this bit at least finished. So these bristle brushes are great for this. So they leave the right kind of mark. We've got the water coming over here. So this is mixing on the panel here that inevitably whatever I put on here is going to mix with the paint that's underneath, but I don't want to be blending and losing all those colours that I sort of spent the effort to get correct. Again, roll that brush about to describe the waterfall there. Over there. Got a little bit over here I haven't painted yet, and then the canvas is almost covered. So I'm not very good at going back and finishing paintings. I do try. I suppose I tend to paint smaller because I know I'll get that painting finished in one hit. But don't know why I decided to go bigger on this one. But, I suppose it's good to do something different. Slightly more yellow as it disappears off there. Got some rocks off in the distance there. So lighter areas. These are a long way away, so we don't need to be worrying about any detail. Dark. And it'll just melt into this tree here. It's a bit dark in there. And it's a bit right there. What I do sometimes is, which I'll do in a moment, I'll just wipe all this paint off here and start again. Not start the painting again, obviously, but just go at it again without all this stuff on here, and almost remind myself that I need to be mixing the correct colours and tones and whatnot. But when I've got all this mess on here, it's tempting just to keep dipping into stuff, and you can end up with a mess or not getting the colours right. So it's a shame. We've got a good start to not get it looking good. So it'd be a good idea to step back from it and have a look at it from a distance. Quick look at your messages. Hello, Simone. Now see clearly the painting is developing. I was concerned initially with the amount of drawing because for me that'd be too distracting. Good to see it working. Yeah, it was very distracting, that drawing. That a little bit overwhelming, but I suppose putting in this major rock here, the little waterfall off in the distance, obviously getting this fairly accurate. A lot of the other stuff doesn't really matter. These rocks here, I've kind of, in my head, I suppose, went for putting, points in here where I can look to that, if I want to say paint this rock here, I know it's just slightly up and to the right of that rock. So it's good to have, a few landmarks. That's the word I was looking for. So let's just clean this off. So this is just a piece of glass on here that I picked up from a second-hand store. It was just a large frame, which I just cut the glass in half. And the baby wipes are great for cleaning oil paint. Nice and easy to wipe off. And I use a piece of glass because it's easy to clean, as you can see, and it's gentle on the brushes. Just need to just dry that so it's not wet. So I'd like to get a little bit of detail done on this painting. Maybe let's try and finish this part here. Right, so all I've got to do is same as what I was doing before, but start now to get a little bit more detail in. So we've got a bit of light coming across here. So thicker paint now. The canvas is covered and this is all quite thin, so it wouldn't pass as a painting because it looks half finished, because obviously it is. So now I'll start to load the paint up. A lot of paint on the brush, and that is the final mark for the painting, you know. And so this is slightly raised from the surface. You've got to avoid messing with it, so, you know, overworking it, and use the brush on its side. Just create that waterfall there, and same here. And you know, if I make a shape or mark that's slightly different to what's there, you know, it's better to just, as long as it looks okay, go with that, because if you start messing about, fiddling and trying to get it absolutely perfect, you know, you will lose the freshness and it will just become overworked. And you know, if you start getting white paint everywhere, it will all just become milky. That I think that was quite possibly one of my beginner issues I had, that, you know, I tried to make it lighter and the white paint wasn't making it light enough because all my other values were wrong. So got to get your values right. A bit of more yellow in there. Just got to be careful I don't pick up a load of other paint and spread it about and lose the light there. So this light on the water here, which is kind of a green, it looks like see-through green because we know it's water, so that's just a trick being played on my mind. Just a touch of red, it's just a colour, just a tonal value. Test, too dark, too light. Perfect. So wipe that off as well. So nicely loaded up brush. So this is quite smooth, that area there, so I can do that, and then it kind of comes down there. And it doesn't look right, but I've tested it, it's the right colour, so you've got to have faith that it's just not right in comparison to what's next to it on here, that's all. Happy with that. So it's more green. And I was using quite big brushes. Well, they're not big brushes compared to what some people use, but bigger brushes. And now I'm using a slightly smaller brush to get more kind of detailed marks. More yellow. This is kind of the water swirling around, so I'll do that with my brush. Swirl that brush around. Now it needs to be darker over here. I suppose a painting like this probably would normally take quite a few hours, but I didn't expect to get it finished in the hour. But we'll see how far I can get before I have enough of it. It's all very soft over here. So it's kind of good to do a bit of blending there. So thick paint here, dark, and every time I kind of put some paint on it, I need to just go back in and reload because I'm picking up a bit of that white. But you need these darks for the to create that illusion of light. But yeah, it's quite interesting, you know, that as I'm self-taught, that I started with library books and I had some VHS tapes. That's how long ago it was. And now it's all sort of changes that, you know, I don't mind using a bit of AI to find reference pictures and so on. But that's one of my challenges I find for YouTube, or because I'm doing so many demos, is finding enough reference pictures to paint. So I have a group called Inspirational Photos, Photo Inspiration for Artists on Facebook, and a few people have shared some photos on there to paint, which is good. But I don't mind. See, AI is here. You know, it's not going to go away now. So now I try to embrace it a little bit with using it for reference pictures. I made a Paris scene, which was okay on that. But I think the problem with the AI is it winds people up because people like to just put obviously an AI picture on there and say that they painted it, which, you know, obviously just spoils it for everyone, or, you know, just spoils the groups. That but to be fair, I find with Facebook it's just full of scams. As soon as I add a painting on there, instant someone wants to buy it, you know, but I know it's a scam. And what the scam is, there's so many out there that I don't fall for it, and hopefully you don't as well. That NFTs and all that stuff, it's kind of spoils it for artists who want to sell artwork, but I think they're preying on innocent artists who are desperate to sell a painting. But often, if it's too good to be true, it is. Right. Let's go back to a bit of the green. So obviously the if you're still watching, good to have you here still. But appreciate it. You're still with me watching. The live stream will be available on the replay, but not telling you have to go away. But it's much more fun painting with you know, a few of your comments and so on. But, so thicker paint now, because this is again the final part of the painting. I don't want to be doing this again over here. So there's a bit of a tree. It just disappears off into there. Thanks, GB. Much appreciated. So it's a beautiful photo that I got this off Pixabay. That when I edit these into videos in their own right, I shall make a note of the photographer. But there's quite a few good royalty-free sites that you can make a little donation to the photographer and whatnot. Just put in just a suggestion of the tree there. It doesn't need a lot of detail because it's the background, and, you know, that's what you got to remember is the background. You know that I suppose if you look at it, you know that this is the center stage. This is where the eye is going to be looking as the water comes over here. So that's got to be really good. You know, this stuff off in the distance, you know, doesn't need to be wonderfully painted. In actual fact, it would detract away if you did make this all very detailed. You know, it just needs to be shapes off in the distance there. Some people would argue that's not the case, but for me, that's how I see it. And you know that if I look at some paintings that I like and inspired me, some master works. You know, that's how I saw they were painted. So, you know, that's how I've learnt to paint. By studying artworks that inspired me. But I'm glad I didn't go to art school. By the sounds of it, that I've actually taught a few people who have come out of art school because they never did any traditional art really, or not what they expected. So I don't think it would have suited me. But, right. And like I say, I quite enjoy, say, doing these YouTube videos. It gives me a purpose to paint because I suppose, you know, I say I'm not very arty person. You know what I mean? That if I wasn't selling the artwork before, I probably wouldn't have painted. So it gives me purpose to paint, to make the videos if I'm not necessarily looking at selling huge amounts of artwork now. But maybe, you know, if I'd worked a normal job all these years, that if I just painted as a hobby, it would be different. But you know, I suppose it's always been a job for me, painting. But you know, a job that I've really enjoyed doing and will enjoy doing, because I probably won't ever reach my goal, because you can always improve. But you know, that's what makes it fun, painting. That you know, there's always something else to learn. Like say portraits, you know, that's another area that I can work on, and you know, outdoor painting. So I started to put a bit of detail on those rocks. So I've kind of painted them in just sort of two shapes, but we've got light areas where perhaps the water's on the rock, and some darker areas. So I'm kind of now not really color checking or whatever. I'm just painting now. And if you are a beginner, be careful. You know, it can go terribly wrong if you don't sort of just stick to the method. But as you get more and more confident, you can kind of steer away from that and just kind of look at what you've got there, and I say just kind of go for it. There's shapes off in the distance, warm and cool. Bit of that light coming across here. So thicker paint. But part of me says just keep going and get it finished, because I know I'll struggle to want to finish it. But we'll see. Keep going until much thicker paint here now. That so I struggled with this area. It's difficult, but maybe I was just overthinking it. Let's just go for it. What do I see? There's a dark shape here, and it kind of snakes its way through there. There's some darks in here, bigger, smaller ones. Darks in there. Some orange. Having a bit of texture on here is actually quite good at giving the illusion of rocks. It's not until I step back from it, because the problem you have is that you know, certainly we're into an hour now that I've been sort of staring at this, and you can't see the wood for the trees, because it's just a massive brushwork. But maybe I think I just need to just get one or two of these rocks looking good, and that probably will be enough. We've got some light on there. more towards yellow brown. As I feel happier now putting thick paint on, because I know it's probably closer to getting the painting finished if I'm going thicker with the paint. Some rocks, there's a bit of light on there. There, so we've got rocks with swirly water on top of them. How do you paint that? All just an illusion. So careful not to get lost. A break from this bit because I feel I'm kind of just putting paint on without really thinking about it, but sometimes that's quite good. But some darks up here. And so if you get all your darks in the right place, a nice crisp edge there. You can see there's a dark there which will connect up into this dark off here. Dark there. Dried paint there from somewhere. This is, you kind of need connection in your painting, that and that's what these darks will do here. They'll connect all this up. This kind of then becomes one shape. That you know, when you look at something, you know, you see it as a whole. You don't look at it as a, you know, there's a rock, there's another rock, there's a branch. You know, you just see the whole thing as a whole. So step back, or I can just lean back maybe and just have a look. That so I can see I need more orange here. So it's just where the rocks are just appearing under that water. Maybe have a go at putting some of these dark greens in. So I certainly find it useful, say, to dart about on the panel, because if you find an area a bit overwhelming, just do a little bit to it, come back to it with fresh eyes, have another go. We've got some darks in here. The water is traveling up there. Maybe that's a little bit too dark. I'm using a round brush, but I can kind of flatten it by pulling it like that. It gives me kind of a chiseled edge. And then we can just, and this is just going to describe the flow of the water. But it's kind of how I envisioned it would look. As I had the expectations, you know, that it wasn't going to be individual rocks painted, but you know, as long as when I step back from it, or whoever views it from across the gallery, it looks like a photo. That's good. That's all we need. These are kind of directional lines that, you know, lead us nicely into the painting. And I find this orange not under painting, but you know, the stain on the panel kind of comes through in places and leaves a bit of a warmth all over the scene. Darks in here. some bluey green in there. Thank you, Hilary. So I'm still starting to feel a little bit better about it, and I think that's what happens with painting, that you go through stages where you think, oh dear, you know, I've messed another one up, and then you kind of, if you stick with it, you get past that point, and then you kind of think, well, actually, this is going to be quite good. But you've got to be careful you don't become a little bit too complacent, and then make a mess of it. So, you know, I've got this far because I've stuck to that plan. You know, I had a good drawing, and you know, I've put the right colours and the right tones down. So if I stop doing that, I'll lose all this. So all I'm doing different now is much thicker paint, and still kind of just looking at the shapes. But we came back from holiday, and I did some watercolours demos, and I painted 4 or 5, and they all failed. And I had to go back to the drawing board and just, you know, think, right, what should I be doing? You know, practice what I preach or whatever. And then, you know, I was fine. That's a bit complacent, maybe. The universe has a great way to level you if you get a bit complacent, I think. Thank you. So I was ready to call it a day at an hour, but you know, I'm more enthusiastic about it now because it's starting to go well, hopefully. Just putting that dark in, I see there. And part of me knows I won't finish it if I don't finish it now, or at least get it a good way. So, darks. So it's more brown over here. That's what you've got to be careful of when you get a bit tired, which you probably am now. It's, you know, it's too easy to just think, oh yeah, that'll do. Just keep going with that brush mark there. It worked there, so it will work there. But it's not, because it's not. That's kind of a dark green, but over here it's dark brown. So, and that works quite well. So it's dragging the side of the brush, you know, and that's what you got to do. You just got to just try things, you know, see what works, you know. And you know, this is an old knackered brush, but it's doing the job. And you know, if I can paint all this little detail of water bubbling over rocks by just dragging that brush across here, that's a win for me, because I don't have the patience to do any more than that. And that might come from, because I suppose in my early part of painting, where I was kind of painting to sell, I was in a market which was kind of Etsy and eBay, which is the lower end price market. So, you know, I didn't want to be spending hours and hours on a painting to not necessarily get the big bucks for it. So that's kind of maybe why I want to paint things quickly. I don't know, but it's quite good now, the fact that I suppose because my artwork has, you know, improved over the years, and I've got to a standard now where I don't necessarily want to sell them for next to nothing. So by now sort of teaching, and my income comes from, you know, Patreon and a bit of YouTube ad revenue, and I don't actually need to sell paintings now, that I can actually put the prices on them that you know, are more kind of gives me value. That, you know, it's artists are terrible for, you know, undervaluing themselves. That I suppose, you know, part of you, you know, don't necessarily think it's good enough, or You know, I suppose you sell a few paintings to family and friends, which they're buying them from you maybe because they want to support you and so on. But you know, obviously the point comes where your artwork gets quite good and you can't then start giving it away. But the problem is you then stop selling, you know, because if I tried to sell artwork for decent money on eBay or Etsy, you just wouldn't get that figure for it. It's the wrong market. But I had an expo recently, which did quite well, but it was, you know, a better market. You know, had lots of footfall and so on. But that's, you know, there's a whole other subject which I probably won't ever get into, is selling artwork. There's probably lots of channels that do it, but I think I did hear Jordan Peterson say it's impossible for an artist to make a living selling artwork, which I did for quite a few years, but only because I was perhaps in a market that was high volume. There are some artists out there who do make a living from selling from selling paintings. You know, if you've got a good gallery, you know, good support network and so on. But I suppose a lot of it is luck, being in the right place at the right time. But I would say definitely get your artwork up to standard first. Some live streams last 5 hours. Keep going. Okay, appreciate that. Do you think that painting on canvas with more tooth using the same techniques would work? Yeah, I paint on canvas and panels. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, the canvas does have a bit more tooth, but I find it much the same, to be fair. And the only reason I paint on panels is because I've probably gone into the depot store and they had a load of, in France I live, that in Brico-Marché, which is like B&Q in the UK, just like a hardware store, that they put all their offcuts of MDF and panels and whatnot in a big trolley, and then they kind of sell it for €10. So if you're there at the right time, you can get it. And then I just cut them up into smaller panels to paint on. You know, I would paint on anything. But again, you know, that's going back to some artists would disagree with all that, and I should be painting on Belgian linen that's been primed with lead white and all that sort of stuff. You know, and I think the problem, you know, beginners see all that or watch all that and think, well, you know, I need to be doing that. But as an example, I painted an oil painting on a piece of MDF panel, which was primed well on both sides. And my mum, I gave it to her because she likes owls, and she wanted it in her garden. I said, well, just nail it onto your wall, onto your barn, onto your shed door. She did that, and it lasted for years on there, no problem at all. So, but obviously you wouldn't necessarily do that with a masterpiece that you want to keep forever and a day. But I think, you know, am I really worried about my paintings lasting for 500 years? Probably not. Certainly if I do a commission for somebody, I will paint on the, you know, a good quality canvas. You know, I'm using artist quality paints. But I think if you get too overthink it, really, it just, you know, you will end up worrying more about what should I be doing or what shouldn't I be doing than actually painting. Which, to be fair, if you're a beginner, you're not at the stage where you probably need to be worrying about your paintings lasting 500 years, because, you know, you'll probably end up throwing them away because you think, you know, I'm now at a better stage. I certainly found that kind of was the case for me. So it's just starting to look a little bit better now here, but probably good to have a little break from that, really, because before I overwork that. So let's get some more white on there. So new brush. That was not too dirty, that'd be okay. A nice big blob of white, but there's already a bit of blue on that brush, so that probably will take it back. I don't mind maybe just a touch of blue. I don't like using just white paint on the paintings because Very rarely is there just white paint. But, I have sold a lot of paintings in the past on eBay and Etsy. At one point, I think I sold 100 paintings in a month. It actually made quite a good living from it. But, certainly, I earned more doing that than I was selling BMW motorcycles. So you can earn quite a good wage as an artist, but it was hard work. You know, lots of marketing and you know, listings and so on. I've got a good support network. My wife, Kate, that she helps with the website and the listings of paintings and so on. So I can concentrate on just making YouTube videos and painting. But, a little bit harder going on YouTube, but this is why, you know, I really do like Patreon, because you know, it's better, well, it's a more certain income. You know, YouTube, you just don't know that you do a video and it gets lots of views. You do a very similar video and hardly gets any views. So there's a bit of a lottery, I think, with YouTube. So they move the goalposts quite regularly as well. So this thicker paint, I've got a light coming down here which just catches the raised points, which is why it kind of looks quite stands out quite a bit. That I had someone come to my studio who found me on YouTube. He lives in France, and he asked about my lighting and so on. And basically, I've just got normal LED strip lights. They're 40 watts. They're 4000K. But say my lighting is a lot to do with, as long as it looks good on the camera for YouTube. That's probably what I'm more worried about. But they do come out okay when they're finished. But I had some daylight bulbs and so on, which were okay. But eventually, I found I actually had too much light, and my paintings looked very dark. So I sort of went back and have a little bit less light. And I think Rembrandt and that, they used to paint by candlelight, you know, which is why they look very light, because he's painted them, I suppose, in such dark areas, and then they have kind of a lot dark and then just a real light. So thicker paint there. Just load that on there. Water coming around there as well, which is quite nice. Adjust that. That's okay. Hilary says, I recently bought a few sets of brushes online from a site which isn't highly thought of. They were so cheap but really good quality. Yeah, you know, I don't spend a fortune on brushes. These are Pro Art Series A. They're not expensive, but they're really good. I think I've bought brushes before and you kind of do all this stuff and the hairs just fall out, the ferrule comes off, but these are really well made, so I stick with these. I've got some Rosemary & Co brushes as well. They're really good, you know, well made. So let's suggest the movement of that water. Again, just I kind of hold the brush between two fingers almost, and just lightly just let the paint just drop off the brush. Just, well, sort of, I don't want to scrub at this, you see, that if I scrub at it too much, it'll you know, just mix with what's underneath there, whereas I just want to lay that on there. So this needs a bit of attention over here. Let's go to a smaller brush. That was a bit big. So we've got this orange here. The orange there is okay. It just needs a few bits of light. A little bit of light there. What I've got there, that's just light on there. Be careful doing this though, you end up kind of just dabbing the brush about all over the place, and you know, it isn't necessarily the right tonal value. Let's just pick out a few. So more blue. Wasn't the colour I thought at all. That's why it's so important to colour check. So just a little bit of light around there. Just need to check I've got the right darkness there, and then paint a bit of light on top of that. So I've got a monitor just there in front of me that's just sort of let me know it's still live and whatnot, but it's quite good that I can kind of look into the monitor, and I've got, you know, a small screen showing this painting being painted, and it's actually quite good to sort of see it perhaps how someone else would see it, because from here it just looks awful, it looks a right mess, but actually when I look at it in the monitor it looks, you know, quite good. So what I used to do sometimes was just take a picture of the painting on my phone and then just have a look at it, you know, smaller, and maybe you just need to see it differently, because I'm sure you've done it when you've done your painting, and you know you may not be pleased with it, but have a look at it the following day and you think, oh, that's not so bad. I think sometimes you just can't see it, whatever reason. These darks. It's quite a tricky area, this water here, because there's a lot going on. But again, just don't try and paint it all. We've got some bits of orange. So if you put the lighter areas next to the real dark areas, they'll have more effect, more contrast. So nicely loaded up brush. So there's a few rocks off in the distance, which are perhaps catching a bit of light on there. Finger there. So we've got this rock here that's under the water, but just suggest that, and maybe just blend that with my finger there. Worked okay. And there's just a shadow along the side of it. Just try and get some rocks that look like they're underwater. It's okay. There with some darks. It's just a dark there. Just lay the paint on. This is just all the movement on the water here that's just creating these lines. And I'm not going to paint them as is, but just kind of just have a go at just suggesting some of that movement. Swirls and whatever else. I think we need some more darks in here. There's dark there, kind of looking okay. And when you've got something that kind of looks okay, you know, leave it. You know, don't try and make it better. It works. There's just a few little darks. These are all quite sort of good sort of tools to lead us into the painting. More browny orange over there. Probably, you know, if that kind of looks okay, so I'll probably just leave it at that water area that I've found that it's quite useful editing the videos, because I kind of, you know, praise myself, you know, for the painting, and quite often the case is, you know, I could have stopped sort of half an hour ago, but I just keep painting, and you know, am I actually making it any better? So, you know, I kind of try to learn from that. Really thick paint there now. You can kind of take it past the point where, you know, it looks fresh and you know, nicely painted, to then becoming overworked. More brown in there. Just some darks in there. But in a really thick paint now, I'm just loading that on there. Any tips on how to clean your brush? Well, I very rarely clean my brushes. That I know I've mentioned it before. Show you. Between painting sessions, that I paint every day, pretty much. Well, watercolors or oils, but certainly I don't go a week without painting oils. So what I do between painting sessions, I've got this little tub here which has got linseed oil in here. I just leave it in there, so the hairs are underwater, well, not underwater, under oil, so it's not going to dry out. And I keep this in an airtight box, this container. If you were going to leave it for several months, I would wash them out, which I'll explain how I do that afterwards. But they'll stay like that for ages, and actually keeps them in really good condition. I just give them a little wipe off, and then they're good to go. Linseed oil is obviously very expensive, the artist quality stuff. So, you know, ideally you should put oil in there, you know, proper refined linseed oil. But what I do is I buy a big drum, 5-litre drum of oil de lin, which is just linseed oil, but it's boiled linseed oil. But make sure you just give the brushes a good wipe off. That the artist stuff is non-yellowing, so you know, it won't turn your painting yellow. So, but I've been doing this for years, and I've never had a painting go yellow. But obviously it's much cheaper to do it that way. And for actually cleaning your brushes, I have 3 jars with white spirit in, and I give the brush a wipe off with tissue. Into the first jar, a good rinse, again wipe it off with tissue. Then into the second jar, which is obviously cleaner white spirit at that stage, same process. And then finally into the third jar for its final clean, and then I'll take it to the sink and run some soap through it. You might think, you know, after 3 goes in white spirit you'd have all the paint out, but you haven't. So you'll see when you wash it with some soap, loads more paint comes out. And now that's why I use that oil well, because it doesn't matter how well you wash your brush, you will still probably have paint left in it, and if you leave it, it will just dry, and then you get you know, splayed out heads and so on. So that's why I tend to avoid washing my brushes if I can. So let's have a go at getting this rock here a little bit crisper. Just light against dark, that's always good. So let's just put a bit of light there. Now when I go with the dark against that, it'll give me more contrast. So some brown, I can see there, a bit of red, touch of blue. And you know, there's so many ways you can get to these colors that you really don't have to have the same makes or same colors even, that you could use completely different palette and you could still probably paint this. But I find these colors are good for painting most things. As you've seen, I've managed to match pretty much all of this. So sharp edge for that rock. And then it goes more yellow. Just make sure I'm mixing plenty of paint up now. We want nice thick paint there. And that's a dark on this side of the rock. Keep that brush for my dark. Slightly more yellow and lighter. And I find if you only need to get one or two of these rocks looking really good, and the eye will then fill in the gaps, whoever's looking at your painting. It's an illusion. If I get that rock there looking quite detailed, people will say, "Oh, you did loads of details on those rocks." Obviously, I didn't. Some lighter areas under there. And you kind of, the more you look, the more you see. You start seeing different colours and tones in here, but it gets to the point where you think, well, I probably should stop. Am I making it any better? You've got to ask yourself. That sometimes if you're enjoying painting, you just keep going, but sometimes it's better to stop while you're ahead. I think maybe that rock's not doing it. Let's sort that dark out there. So let's get around there, nice sharp edge, make it more rock shape. And then that dark connects up to there. Get rid of those. I think just a bit of detail on there. I probably will call that a day. I think on this that I've got further than I thought I would with it. But, maybe I'll possibly do another sitting on it in the future. Put that dark there. I find that I had quite good darks in there, but I've kind of lost those through the painting process. So all you've got to do is just come back in and just thicker paint, just lay it on there. Dark there. Yellow, by the looks of it. And it's quite a good method for painting rocks, just sort of roll in the brush, because it kind of creates that sort of texture you see on the rocks. Yellow, a bit of red, a bit lighter as it comes across there, and then lighter on the top of the rock. It's very difficult to leave a painting because you think, well, I'll call it a day at that, and then I see something, that bit of green coming across there. Soft edge there. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there because I think I will run the risk of sort of spoiling what we've got so far. So thank you for joining me live. But if I do work on it anymore, I shall let you know, and Just switch to the other camera. Get rid of that reference picture. Not good to compare your painting to that. It's never going to win. But I'll put a picture of the painting on Patreon and on a community post maybe, and you can then see it, some close-ups of it. But really appreciate you watching live, and thanks for your positive comments and enthusiasm to keep me going. That we've managed an hour and 45 minutes, which is good. So until the next one, I shall see you soon. So cheerio, bye for now.